Thanks for tuning in to another show in the Next Reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
In 2007, Marvel published a story called One More Day. In it, Peter Parker makes a deal with the devil, Mephisto. He trades his marriage to Mary Jane, the love of his life, to save Aunt May and erase the world's knowledge of who he is. What came next in Amazing Spider-Man 546, March of 2008, was Brand New Day. Dan Slott and Stephen McNiven reset Spider-Man to a bachelor with a secret and no history behind him. Readers have been arguing about it for 18 years, mostly because it took a character's hard-won growth and largely put it back in a box. Spider-Man, Brand New Day, keeps that reset. 4 years ago, he asked a wizard to make the world forget him, and the wizard said yes, and this weekend we get to find out what that cost him. Oh, and he's also got the Punisher along for it, which is actually a smaller swerve than it sounds. Frank Castle's first appearance was Amazing Spider-Man 129 in 1974. So, here we are. Destin Daniel Cretton directs, script by Chris McKenna and Eric Summers, rewritten by Justin Kuritsky's Brett Pollock shooting, Michael Giacchino scoring, Jackie Chan stunt team on the fights. I'm Pete Wright, and this is the Film Board, where once a month we take apart a new release with a room full of smart film people with opinions. Today's panel, Justin J.J. Jaeger, Tommy Metz III, Steve Sarmento, Ocean Murff, and Matthew Fox. Welcome, and let us begin with opening thoughts around the table in brief. Beginning with Matthew Fox. How you doing? How'd you like it? Can you do it in brief?
No. So imagine you're really sick of all the restaurants in your town always serve the same entree and you're sick of it. You hear about a new restaurant, it's serving something totally new. You go there, the decor is great, the flavors are great, the flavor pairings are great, the appetizers, the drinks, and then you find out it's serving the same red-headed entree that every other restaurant you've been to is serving, and that you're kind of sick of it. I loved so much of this movie. I think it is a great movie outside of the MCU, with the exception of the Jean Greyness of it all. Within the MCU, I have some concerns.
Concerns abound. Tom.
Hello, it's me.
Hi.
I, as the least Marvelist person on the podcast, I would like to just say that I adored this movie.
Okay.
I teared up. I laughed. It actually has jokes. It actually has characters. It's outstanding. I thought it was really, really, really thrilling. This and Odyssey back to back this is a good time for the Film Board. Sorry, the finest hours or whatever that other movie was called.
I was going to say, don't worry. We've got a lot of movies ahead of us. Okay. Yeah. JJ.
So I really liked this movie too, and I think I'm going to make some bold claims about where it sits in the MCU. So I'm really excited to talk to Matthew about this, because one of the things that I really liked about this movie was that it felt like one of the more complete films within the MCU. And I kind of get that vibe from Matthew when he says that it kind of is a standalone film. And it does something that I think is really interesting, because there's a lot of complaints about the MCU that sometimes it's too shallow, sometimes it's too deep, sometimes it's too comic booky, sometimes it's too connected to all of the through lines of what we're experiencing in the world. I think this movie does all of them very, very well. And that really goes with the theme of the film. When we get into spoilers and we start talking about, are you Peter or are you Spider-Man? And he says, I'm both. Holy cow. That's what this movie was for me. This was Marvel saying, I'm all of what I am. And in the result of that, for me, it harkens back to early Marvel days before the MCU. What I loved about the Fox X-Men movies, when they were really essentially comic book movies where you saw the frames on screen, they deliberately put that in this movie, and I loved it. So I'm all about this movie.
Okay. Ocean?
Visually, it is outstanding. I do think the movie is entertaining. And to keep it brief, I'm trying to wrestle and reconcile with this fact that Spider-Man has been rebooted, but I have not.
Oh.
We're grateful
is-
for that later fact, but I see the problem.
Modeling some incredible self-awareness, self-insight, Ocean. I'm really impressed. And we shall begin your session. The clock starts now.
Thank you. I'm on the couch ready.
Right. Mr. Steve.
Yes. So every time I walk into a movie, I try to approach it. I'm going to take this as the text it is itself, a standalone piece. What does it mean in and of itself, separate from all the other things? I'll look at all that later. But let me just take this as presented, assuming I don't need to know anything else going in, any of that, whatever. With that in mind, what I thought about this movie was that Brand New Day takes on a variety of character-focused story elements and explores them in the context of that small Sony corner of the MCU, and it slightly brushes up against that larger MCU, but it was really firmly grounded in Peter's personal struggles. And when you have something so character-focused like that, that is something that to me is a truly compelling and rewarding film because it stands on its own feet with those things. The rest is extra dressing and sprinkles and sparkles that, may or may not add flavor and all that. It doesn't need it. It may add something to it. Without it, solid. With it, great. It may take it to another level for some people.
Okay. I appreciate that stance. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I would say my emotional experience with the movie was superlative. I deeply enjoyed my time. I found myself continuously looking at my watch, not because I thought it was too long and the pacing was rough. It's because I wanted my watch to agree with me that I wanted it to slow down. I wanted to make sure time wasn't passing too quickly because I was having a blast with it. And I want to talk about the comic mischievousness of this film, and I want to gate it in this first major segment that we're calling Is Peter Parker the Problem? And this is going to be your chance, Matthew and Ocean, to present the case that Peter keeps choosing to change the world instead of changing himself. Is he really an adult, or is he a kid who has never once have been modeled consequences? Because this is now is it the fourth standalone film? I can't remember in Homecoming if he had this problem, but I think it is every single one of these movies he has this opportunity to change himself, and he chooses to change everybody else instead. And I'm really curious kind of where you stand on some of these more comic elements, and then I promise we will turn it off and talk about craft in the movie. But we got to get this on the table. Who would like to begin?
Yeah, I have the hot take that I think Spider-Man's really the villain.
Okay.
And that because the villain never is the villain of his own story. We're watching Spider-Man stories and watching the story of a character that doesn't consider consequences for his actions. He doesn't really care about anything else. Anytime he has the opportunity to change and grow, he decides, nope, let's do everything else. So the basic examples which Pete did brush on in what is it? So in Brand New, I can start with Brand New Day and start with this movie. That basically instead of trying to work out his problems with Jean Grey, he decides, hey, let me create a device that would end all mutants. Let's revisit X-Men 3 and then cancel out everybody's powers. Because why am I making that? Well, it turns out I'm changing a little bit. I don't like it. I could get help to handle this, but instead of that, let me build something that then suppresses me, and then think, oh, how can I suppress everybody else? Because I want to be a control freak and control everything and make sure everything stays my happy way. And now the premise of that, why are we in Brand New Day? Because of No Way Home. He was like, oh, my best friend and my girlfriend can't get into MIT. So what am I going to do? I could ask, hey, counselor, could you maybe give them a second chance and don't blame them for knowing me? No. Instead of that, let me think about what should I do? Oh, I know the next logical step. Let's brainwash the entire world into not knowing who I am, because it's inconvenient for me for everybody to know who I am, even though I live in an MCU, and at this point I am still in the MCU, where heroes don't have secret identities. Everybody knows who everybody is. So it's not like it's something that I have no role models, no examples of this, no way that I could grow as an individual to accept that, hey, even though I can be both, because Tony Stark is both Tony Stark and Iron Man, Captain America is both Captain America and Steve Rogers, etc., 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 except for Thor. Thor is just Thor, and that's the way it's going to stay. But outside of that, he could have done all of these other things to grow as an individual, but instead of that, he's like, hey, let me do this world cataclysmic thing because I want to control everyone else as opposed to growing as myself. And the seeds of that started in Far From Home, where he has a powerful AI that was left to him by his mentor who just died saving the universe. And he recognizes, or somewhere along the way, I guess, that he can't handle it. And instead of saying, hey, let me sit it to the side and wait till I can handle it and grow and mature as an individual, let me just give it away to someone else and hopefully you can fix everything because I'm too busy trying to, I don't know, hang out with my girlfriend. And so I think that basically anytime anything in the world inconveniences him, what he decides to do is he's like, I'm going to change everybody else, and that is some straight villainous activities.
Okay. We've got applause in the jury. Matthew, where does that put you?
I'm gonna completely agree, and then yes, because I think everything that Ocean said is right. I think clearly we're going to have an MCU X-Men movie at some point soon, where the Spider-Man device is going to be the primary MacGuffin that is used against the X-Men. And I think it's worth noting he didn't invent this. Bruce Banner did.
Right.
But Bruce Banner was just like, it's for me, and it's really dangerous for anyone else, and I'm not going to do it for anyone else. It's Spider-Man who took it and kept running with it. And I do think, I think what a lot of it underlines is something that I think has been a theme. It's that it is a lot Peter Parker's fault. It's also Tony Stark's fault, because Bruce Banner is a fully formed adult. Peter Parker is a kid. He is now a legal to drink and vote kid, but he is still very much a kid. He's still the 16-year-old or 15-year-old, whatever it was, that Tony Stark came along and said, hey, you've got a power, let's throw you into a war, and has never stopped since. And I say the Tony Stark part partially in jest, but partially in truth, but I think that all of that, and like I said, at a later point, I'll get into my Jean Grey thoughts of it, but I do think the way that Peter... think about how many great villains are people who have a very sympathetic reason for doing their villainy, but they're still villains. And along
especially Spider-Man villains, but keep going.
And along comes this person who, through the Daredevil, school of magic, has managed to do massive explosions and car crashes, but somehow we haven't seen a dead body, but her body count is high. But, she did it because her sister... And damage control is also bad, so she must be a hero after all. And I thought he was fundamentally wrong for that. And we'll get into more of it. And obviously, there's a lot more to her side of it. But I think he is a lovable, relatable, incredibly understandable, brilliantly acted villain. And I thought I had enough of John Barenthal mentoring Tom Holland. I hadn't. I loved seeing it again. But I just think he's ethically really problematic because he's a kid and he doesn't know what he's doing.
If there is a bandwagon on which to jump, I choose this point, which is structurally the movie picks up effectively right after the events of the last movie, and then it moves us forward 4 years, right? It's because MJ and MJ and Ned get into MIT and they do their 4 years and we check in with them by social media. Meanwhile, Spider-Man is completely absorbed in his work as Spider-Man, right? He has a terrible social life and does a ton of doom scrolling, but my God, is he peak Spider-Man. And I do adore that. The thing that I think is challenging with this movie is that it is exactly your point, Matthew, that he is still a kid, but the movie wants us to believe he is an adult, right? He's not out. He's out of college age. He is brilliant. It's not as if he desperately needed the intellectual pursuits of college, but he totally needed the maturing pursuits of college. He totally needs his brain to keep baking for a little while longer because, to Ocean's point, every single one of his choices in these past movies, including this one, are teenage impetuousness, right? And that just feels to me like we get actually a kind of a lovely mix of Spider-Man, the Spider-Man, high school Spider-Man that I loved so much from Homecoming, and we get to see him still fighting those demons. But that's the part that feels sort of emotionally repetitive, I think, for me, that I don't know what they wanted me to believe how he had matured, but I'm not sure that I saw as much of it as maybe I was kind of ready for. Was I ready for Jake Johnson Spider-Man, right? From, like, not quite. I didn't want that one. Steve.
So this is one problem I have with, there's a lot of things going on in this film and they've got to tie up story ends. And that's the one that I think I personally wanted to see more on, because yes, he's got to go out in the world. He's got to adult. So he throws himself 110% into being Spider-Man, to the point where it's like, dude, you need to have balance in your life. You can't just always do this. And it's taking a toll on you. To me, I think that feeds the storyline of, are you Spider-Man? Are you Peter Parker? And I needed more for to see how he resolves that. It leads to his decision about the inhibitor, all of that. And so the resolution is, who are you, Peter Parker or Spider-Man? It's taken science for him to try to balance things out. He's got hormonal imbalances. He's got different powers that conflict. And the resolution is, how this all gets fixed is he says, I can be both. That's all we need to know. I didn't see anything that got him to that point, or what he had to give up and sacrifice, what it cost him, what he had to accept and take on to create this balance. And that's the one part where I thought, that's the story I wanted, because that's what this really is about. Yeah, he was immature in those earlier movies, so he has to grapple with how to function as an adult in the world and take on responsibility, because just being Spider-Man is not sustainable. He needs that Peter Parker, and how to balance that has got to be more than just, well, I've decided, so it's so.
Yeah, in fact, it's more stress that led him to this reconciliation. Not like he is deeply addicted to work. He has no balance.
Oh, yeah.
And he never found balance. He stumbled on it, right? Like, I think they wanted us to see it. And let me say, I don't really care, because I loved it so much when his web shooters blew off his wrists and he started oozing web fluid. That was great. Like, they had me. Okay.
You didn't think that you didn't have the gross reaction that the Amazing Spider they hadn't what was it No Way Home, when they found out that the Toby Spider-Man could do that. They were like, how does that work?
That was the greatest gift of Sam Raimi. I think it's just like, let's be done with web shooters. I think that's absolutely fantastic, and I'm here for it. JJ, where do you weigh in on all of this stuff?
Well, I think these are all really great observations. And one of the things that I think is interesting is I had never considered that this is really villainous actions by them. But I'm extremely deep on the whole X-Men universe. So I think one of the interesting things that I'm considering now about Spider-Man that I have always kind of applied to all the X-Men is that some of the subversion of the story here is the fact that within the heroes as first-person protagonists, we have the rest of the world experiencing what the heroes do as antagonists. Mm-hmm. So yes, this story, even the story that we have here in Brand New Day, is somewhat valorizing or justifying what Jean and Peter are doing here. But the reality is outside observers, they are outcasts and freaks that are continually destroying people and society and all these things. And that is the essential conflict that sits within Peter Parker's character over the course of his things. Matthew brought up the idea that all of these villains are sort of have these pure intentions when they begin, but they're all of Peter's idols that turn out to be terrible incarnations of what mutation can do. And if you look at the X-Men, yes, Jean is extremely problematic for everything she's doing here. And potentially, I and my kids were very excited to see her driving upstate at the end of the movie to make her way to the school. But that's really the concept of mutants in general. Everyone's terrified of them because they do these terrifying things. And it's important, I think an important part of the story is to see that they are human too. And that's kind of the beauty, I think, of what is expressed to us in this movie. You can definitely see them as a villain, even though I didn't think that. I think it's a great hot take. But I'm on the side of the outcast in here and wanting to figure out a way to understand their humanity, even in their power. So I love it. I think it's a great take, and I think it's a great thing to consider about the movie. And I'm still a fan of all the characters.
And I just want to add to that because I think it actually solves one of the oddest problems of having the X-Men in the larger universe, which is that a lot of the times it feels like people are super happy with every kind of superhero, many of whom are genetic mutations just through outside forces. But the X-Men, who have this naturally evolving gene, they're so crazy and weird.
Right.
And so I think in a world where like you said, I mean, I lived in New York City. Renters insurance was already bad. In this world, it's going to be a lot worse. Property damage is just really common. And I don't think the act of God clause works for Loki or Thor. But I think that like the idea of, yes, a world that might want to limit the powers of X-Men is of course going to want to limit the powers of Dr. Banner. Is of course
Right.
going to want like who is also a mutant. He is a mutant for another kind of reason. And so while I have a lot of issues with how this is kind of introducing the X-Men, I did think that connection of Banner, if anyone's going to be wanting to be restrained, it's Banner more than anyone else, certainly more than the X-Men. And then let's talk about that problem of who should be doing their restraining and what happens if they're using that power and all those ethical questions that you're bringing up. Yeah, that was one of the things I loved most about this movie. And I thought one of the most sort of interesting twists on the stories we've heard before.
I wanted to lean into the Jean Grey effect, and I'd also like to remind you all that Tom is still here.
I'm enjoying listening. This is fun.
I'm curious from your perspective, Tom, as the one who is least connected to all of this stuff. Do you feel like the movie needs you to know who Jean Grey is in order for it to work?
Good question.
That is a good question. When they turn around, they go, "We finally have a name," and it turns around the computer screen and says Jean Grey, and I was like, "Uh-oh." That was my first, because I was in a pretty full theater, and there was a good amount of people that were like, and it reminded me of like when some bearded guy in Lord of the Rings showed up, and everyone's like, "It's his brother," and I'm like, "Who?" That being said, I was able to. I think it's my experience with the TV show Legion that let me understand this person is just so powerful and is like sort of an amalgamation of a bunch of different powers and able to do so many different things that I was able to latch on pretty much immediately. So no, I didn't know who that was. I still don't know who that is, but I respected it, and I loved to have such a powerful character, but then to show the powers manifesting in such a beautifully analog way made it so accessible to me. It reminded me of the movie Fallen from Denzel Washington, where you're just able to look at someone and they become them. I mean, watching which I saw in the credits, they called them the Inhabited. That was a really cool way to show to show the Inhabited in a race across a city. That helps me as a newbie idiot reach out and be like, okay, I can meet this movie, because it's not just sort of like floating craziness. It's like really practical stuff involving real people. So I hope that answers your question. Like I didn't know who it is. I knew it was important, but it didn't matter. It worked. They held me in the right hand, which was great.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things, at least I will say very positively about this movie, is that in reality, the way they structured it and all that, Jean Grey's history, backstory, and all that stuff really is irrelevant. I mean, they did a really good job of establishing, kind of what she could do in this universe, who she, enough of who she is. They made up a sister, and then they just, they built together a good origin story for the supervillain team up. And so I don't think that you needed, that to know who she was. And I honestly appreciated that. I'm glad that they weren't throwing in a bunch of things that, even though I know who she is, that it's like, well, yeah, I understand this because I know who it is, but now I have to explain to my wife what's going on, and so that, I didn't have to do that, so they did a really good job with that. And, I look forward to what they do with it moving forward. But even standing alone in this story, I do think it is an interesting, problematic thing that, yes, that she is then becomes sympathetic because the real bad guy is, SHIELD USA branch office, what is it, the Department of
Damage control.
Damage control.
Damage
Yeah,
control.
like they make them the villain in a sense in the movie, and then that she's just kind of trying to find her sister again. And that whole storyline was that part for me was not did not resonate with me that well. That I was like, okay, well, fine, she's just doing that. But it was a good origin for her. And again, I did find it was entertaining and visual, but at the same time, I did like how they brought Spider-Man back to meager potatoes, and and had a character that you didn't need to know everything about, because that is a problem with some of the Spider-Man movies or MCU movies in general. They introduce characters that if you don't already know who they are, then everything they're doing is confusing. And I think this movie did improve upon that.
This may be one of the great gifts of the final ultimate, collaboration between X-Men and MCU. Jean Grey, historically, Professor Xavier's first student, right? She's on her way up to Westchester, presumably, where the school does not yet exist. There is great fodder for helping us structurally to, again, earn our wizards, right? To build in X-Men cinematically in a way that I think we don't have to do a lot of homework for. So on that front, I'm kind of on board. There is a giant Doomsday Secret Wars shaped hole between here and there that I'm very nervous about. Matthew.
Yeah, I think they're going to wreck it because I see Patrick Stewart in the trailers, so we can't. We're not rebooting with that.
We're trying to end the multiverse here. That's I think we need a bigger explosion. Matthew, you got a point. Your hand is raised.
I just want to quickly give my why I'm sick of chicken parm argument. And I love hearing that for folks who haven't seen her story a bunch of times, or even have, they really loved it. I think for me, I kind of audibly groaned when I saw who it was. And I think it's just because I feel like it's not, I like Jean Grey as a character, but I think so often the only story we get from her is she is a woman who is so powerful and so full of emotion that she needs a guy to like talk her down somewhat before she harms the world. And we've seen that
good.
She's now the third X-Men franchise, the third actress in the X-Men franchise to do that. We've seen the same story with Dark Willow in Buffy. We saw it with Eleven in Stranger Things. Apparently it's shown up in Charmed. I mean, it's just one of the most common tropes of a powerful woman character. And I just would have loved to see something else. And so there's that part of the rant. And then I think the other thing, and here's where it's the MCU of it all, I did go into this thinking this is the last movie before Doomsday. What are we going to do to set it up? And so unfortunately, once I heard it's Jean Grey, there's a part of my brain that's now thinking, okay, so what are you going to do? Where's the Tesseract of this movie?
Yeah.
The last movie before Avengers introduces the big plot point that becomes so important to Avengers. And so I kept thinking, okay, well, how is this the gateway into the rest of the X-Men or into how the X-Men are in this universe or something like that? And I just found it very, and I think if I watch it a second time not knowing it, I'm probably going to like it a lot more because I won't have that, because I think this would have been a much better, I would have enjoyed it a lot more if it wasn't the last movie before Doomsday. And I think I didn't have all that Doomsday nervousness. But I just think that's for me why, I think the Jean Grey story is great. And frankly, I think this is the best version of it that we've seen. And I think Sadie Sink is fantastic as this character. And I want to see more of it. And I'm really glad we didn't hear the words Dark Phoenix, except that means maybe we'll do this again. But I used to love chicken parm. It's such a good dish, but I've just had it so many damn times. And if other folks aren't there, that's fantastic, and I'm so glad for it. I think that was just why I was not in love with that part of it.
When I saw Jean Grey, I let out an audible gasp, and then I thought, not forward to Doomsday, because I don't care about that. That looks like just such a muddled mess. But I went to New Avengers, and what was so fresh about that is, let's look at how we deal with emotions or don't deal with emotions and all that. And I thought, teenage Jean Grey, or what I thought, okay, this is where Marvel's taking this wing of this universe to this, where it's like, it's a little bit more of the Fox Sony ownership, those pieces. And instead of this big overblown cosmic rays and intergalactic stuff, I'm like, we're dealing with people dealing with human emotions and how they grapple with them. And I thought, that's interesting. And maybe it was the presence of, Florence Pugh that just helped sort of solidify that connection. I thought, this is the corner of the MCU that I'm really enjoying what's going on. I don't need everything, to blow up. I just need people to grapple with themselves and each other. And so I'm hoping we get that face of Jean. And I'm curious, as Pete brought up, of sort of rebooting that X-Men. I think it gives us a different angle. We're not beholden to owning everything that came before and having to connect to that. We've broken it off enough that I think like it can be its own thing, and people will be okay with that, I hope.
I think this is a great way to sort of transition into some craft stuff, because for me, we have some massive characters in this movie, and I would like to hear how you guys feel they were handled. We start with Jean Grey. Obviously, we've talked about how that works. I mean, she doesn't, the character itself isn't introduced until really about 40 minutes into the movie, right? We have a lot of Peter stuff trying to figure out his angst. Or early in the movie. The pacing for that, for me, worked really well. But we also have, I would say, a significant cameo, probably more than a cameo, depending on your cameo canon rules, from Yelena. We have Banner Hulk. We have a significant presence of Hulk, frankly. Very interested in how that hits. And obviously, the Punisher. And I would like to know how you thought those were, how well you thought those were woven in. Are they earned? Were they expected? Are they things you'd like to see more of? How did they all fit into a Spidey movie? JJ, you go first.
Well, I think the thing that I love about it here is that regardless of my impressions of the way they've done it before, everything seemed to fit well here. So like, each of the, let's just call them cameos, even though, we can quibble over the semantics of what that means, but their purpose in the film made a lot of sense, both in a story way and for advancing what we wanted from this individual movie. We got comic relief in some respect from them, and yet they also were really integral to what we were talking about. Specifically, like what Steve was talking about in his last comment about the emotional pieces that are here. It was a connective through line to what we found from Thunderbolts, from the New Avengers. And that really, I am never going to complain when Florence Pugh is on screen. True. She is fantastic and charismatic and captivating with everything she does. Now, John Bernthal is a great New Yorker. He is definitely not, as someone put here in the show notes, the aspect of the emotional nature of the Punisher. I agree. He's not the book Punisher for me, but my kids loved him, and they love that, whether it's caricature or not, whether it's completely skewing Tom Holland's accent or not. It ends up being extremely likable for what's in there. So in what I would take for cameos, this film does it better than most MCU movies. And because of that, I'm happy with the presence of everyone here. It all seemed relevant. And that's the nature of the IP, right? This is, if you look back to comic books, they're dropping in the relevant IP characters when they make sense for the story. And here, I feel like they got it right in a way that they hadn't got it right before.
Tom, jarring? Not jarring? Structurally
not
sound?
Jarring. I completely agree with all of this. JJ started in his opening thing saying this feels like the most complete movie. Some, people have brought up meager potatoes. That's what worked in this movie for me is you don't have to blow up the entire, and what Steve is saying, now I'm just sort of saying what everyone else said, but now it's my turn, not everything has to be a galactic shoved down your throat epic event. This is a New York story about New York people, and not all of New York. And New York isn't taking off and being sent into space or anything like that. Like, it works because, just like JJ's saying, everyone's there for a reason. Sometimes emotional, a lot of times story-wise, and so it doesn't feel like people are just sort of popping in for no reason. That's what I loved so much about this, is it wasn't trying to, like you're saying, Pete, put its arms around the entire MCU world. That's why at the post-credit scene of Ned's thing and showing Spider-Man's in space, the only thought I had was, well, that was fun while it lasted. Like, oh well, okay, whatever's coming up next. I don't understand what Doomsday is or what's happening, but I was like, it's. I can already tell it's not going to be as for me as this movie was. Because this movie is super New Yorky, and that's really cool. Like, to have like the end credits just be a bunch of like B-roll of the city. It's a gritty, cool movie. I like it. It's very, very cool. I was very happy with it.
Two things, one quick, one long. The one non-New York moment, Tom Holland grew up in New York City. He's in New York City. He does not get his pizza from Little Caesars. I don't care how much product placement that was offensive and wrong.
He's just like swinging by Sbarro's. You're like,
oh, look, a mall. It's a local. But no, I completely agree with that. I think, again, it's that I think my enjoyment of the movie is harmed by just being my too MCU'd, because I think everything you just said is perfect. The small potatoes, big potatoes was great. It addressed that question. I think, again, I was just waiting for the help me. I am so nervous about Doomsday, and I wanted this movie to be the on-ramp to it. And I think I'll enjoy it more because it didn't try to be, but I was frustrated in the moment that it wasn't, because it means, Doomsday is going to be a complete and total wreck. And then the flip side was, Steve, you were making that great point about like the teenage-reaviness of it. And it got me, again, I think it's the larger context, because I did think most of the cameos were great. I could have done without the Hulk, but I get why it's there. But I was also thinking, if you're telling a story about teenagers in the MCU, where's Kate Bishop? Where's Kamala Khan? You've done so much to introduce the new Avengers, who I guess aren't going to be like. So it's once again for me the same thing of like, I think the more we can separate this from the larger pace of the MCU, it is a fantastic movie. I don't get where it fits, and maybe that's the whole point, is that it shouldn't.
I think that's maybe the best point, Matthew, is, and I feel like I'm on the other side of it. Like, I'm so nervous about Doomsday and Secret Wars that I found myself so relieved that this movie didn't lean too heavily on it, that this movie can exist as a Spider-Man gem in a series of Tom Holland Spider-Man movies that are all in their way gems, right? And this movie just landed really well. I think specifically, the big potatoes, small potatoes. Yelena exists in this movie. That means there's a connection to the new Avengers, Thunderbolts, whatever. We constantly come back to the same refrain when we talk about superhero movies. Here's a massive thing going on. Why aren't X superheroes joining the fight, right? Yeah. And here we are. We have a great big thing that's happening. Bruce Banner is knocking down a building in the middle of Manhattan. And Yelena just told us why. Because now we know what is a big potato and what is a meager potato. And I low-key love that she is hanging out in a bathhouse while the city is being destroyed, because the bathhouse is bigger potatoes for her than the kind of destruction that Peter's dealing with. That's fantastic structurally, just from the perspective of getting these characters on the page without it feeling super muddied, giving all of the hero moments big things to do and think about, and all the cameos significant time on screen without feeling, clumsy or shoehorned into the story. I think it's a real hit. Ocean.
I would see the movie Yelena: Office Hours. Oh. I would be fine with that. That's the only problem that I had with the bathhouse scene. I was like, can everyone just stand up? Just air dry. It's like the most beautiful room in the entire world. Sorry.
No, I was gonna. Yes, first off, I would like to have an appointment at the Yelena bathhouse for an office visit. For any duration of time. I'm free and available, and we'll clear my schedule accordingly. I guess the one thing that when it came to all of that I did feel shoehorned in was the Hulk, and that for me took me out of it a bit, because there's multiple. I am kind of getting tired of, so every time you put the Hulk on film, he's different and vastly different, because like we had the Smart Hulk, which was finally which is in my opinion the best incarnation of Hulk, where he is both Bruce Banner and the Hulk. He's big, he's green, he's smart. That's great. And then we went back to Savage Hulk for no real apparent reason. We shoehorned him into a movie where he doesn't need to be, because the only logical plot point you could say is that whole thing about the inhibitor device. But then you could have just used Dr. Connors and just brought him in, because they have the lizard guy. Lizard guy's doing the same thing. He's just trying to augment your DNA DNA where he's like, well, what if I wanted to reverse it? Like any good villain would. Let me reverse what you're doing, right? So you could have used existing Spider-Man characters, kept the small potatoes, and left it there. Having the Hulk in there just makes it where now you've entered this confusing element that is not necessary. You don't need his power to get into whatever the building is that Jean Grey's trying to get into, because the Hulk doesn't get in somehow. Like somehow this building can resist the Hulk, but nothing else can. He remembers, in air quotes, Peter at some point somehow, and then doesn't snap his neck, which he easily could have done. He's twice as big for no apparent reason. And so the whole Hulk thing was, it just felt like, hey, we just needed this cool CGI thing to throw in here, guys. Let's just do this. Whereas, but that does make it confusing again, because now the next time I see the Hulk, I'm sure he'll be completely different. Like there'll probably be Gray Hulk, the fixer guy he's working for the mob somewhere.
I'm okay with that. I'm down for Gray Hulk. Hashtag release the Gray Hulk cut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. There's part of me that wants that too. But at the same time, I think that in this movie, that of the different cameos, that the movie has a couple areas where I think it loses its way on what it's trying to be. It's trying to be meager potatoes. I applaud that. But now you've thrown in the Hulk, the exact antithesis of meager potatoes. He could just, he is so big and so powerful and such a big presence and a big force. And in every MC, is he now the character that's in the most MCU movies? Because he's in everything without his own standalone thing, right? And so, but also by making him different and regressing him for no real apparent reason, he just kind of creates this big confusion that doesn't really have a big payoff for me. But the other cameos I thought were great.
That's interesting. I actually find I like Ruffalo's portrayal of Hulk almost in succession, almost every time a little bit more. I like seeing Ruffalo as Banner. I like seeing Ruffalo as CG interpretation of massive Hulk. I actually like that they acknowledged it. I didn't know you could get that big. I don't know why. I don't know why he got that big. Is that because he is regressing? Is that because Jean possessed him? The film is kind of doing both. And by the end, he has the solemn puppy dog face as he lets himself fall off the side of a building. That was a good moment for me. That played.
Yeah.
Okay. I enjoyed Hulk for, two things. Again, I have to remember everything, but Hulk possessed by Jean is trying to get into the room. And I think she doesn't, operator error. She doesn't know what he's capable of. She's just going to try to smash the door. So I'm thinking that's one way to logic through why Hulk isn't getting in there, because Jean Grey is operating this behemoth of a thing. And I did appreciate, going back to the inhibitor, Banner's one line of, you're trying to inhibit all these things. Maybe some things do need to be expressed. And I thought that, sort of laid the ground for Peter's acceptance of this. So I'm going to just touch on that just to throw those points out there. But I really dug into Punisher on this, because I thought that was the interesting piece. There was so much about whatever happened on Staten Island, and I hadn't watched the Punisher One Last Kill little special event thing. So I was like, oh, did I miss something? So I went back and watched that. Yes. No. And here's the thing.
Don't watch it.
It absolutely makes sense. Frank Castle's dealing with, I have completed my mission. I have completed my vengeance. What has it done to me? What type of person am I? Grappling with that emotional arc, which puts him in a place, I think, very appropriate for Peter's story of, if you are the workaholic that are so driven by one thing and one thing only, that will destroy you. Now, Frank doesn't have that conversation, but I think it was a nice parallel for those story arcs of, if Peter just becomes Spider-Man, he's going down that same dark path Punisher did, where you can do all the things, but it won't satisfy the feelings. It won't, all of that. And I thought that was enough. Yes, he may be a lighter, softer, gentler Punisher than in the books, but I think it fit well. It gave Peter something to play off of. It brought a little bit of heaviness to the story. And again, both dealing with loss, having something to connect to have that moment of Frank losing his family, Peter losing May, which is a key piece, regarding his motivation, as a secondary motivation for people that get close to me, people that know who I am. If everybody knows who I am, it puts everyone I love in danger. And so I thought that cameo made sense for me. I think we've touched on the others enough. I just wanted to sort of highlight that little bit about Punisher there.
I got two major points that I want to make sure we hit before we wrap this up. Number one is the expression of Spider-Man in this movie, because that's a thing we haven't even mentioned, and his spider puberty is causing his arachnid DNA to express itself in a way that allows his eyes to go black and his spidey sense to get super activated, and he gets his wrists to go bonkers, and now he becomes Peter too. And I was a little bummed that the marketing of this movie embraced the hero fight against the Hand quite so thoroughly, because man, I was moved by that fight scene on the big screen. I thought that was one of the best things going on in this movie. The sort of dance mechanic of the Hand as they were attacking him, the whoosha expression. Obviously that's the Jackie Chan stunt performers right there. I mean, they are brilliant with their rope work, and the final expression of Peter being able to allow his arachnid self to come forth, I thought hit home really, really well. JJ, why are you smiling so big? Tom? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my favorite sequence as far as non-emotional action sequence, is when they embrace their inner Wachowski, and there's that part where he spins and the camera spins with him 180. Now he's on the ceiling fighting them while they're all down there.
Yeah.
I just started like laughing out loud, like I'm in a theater full of people, and I was like, wee! Like it was just so great in ways that I don't feel like when when Harrison Ford is beating up Hulk in the epitome of fake on fake in a cherry orchard. Like this, everything seems practical and cool, and it really felt Wachowski-esque. It was really neat. I loved that.
Well, and that's the thing, like in that fight scene. And then the other thing is, like, throughout the film, the action sequences, the action camera work in this movie was superior.
Yeah.
They integrated things about, as silly as it sounds, the basic aspect of Spider-Man, the swinging through the city. I feel like this was the best version of it that we've seen in any Spider-Man movie yet. And it integrated pieces and different things from all of the Spider-Man games that are out there. You've got the Sony PlayStation version of swinging. How did they choose? Like, it really, in the filmmakers, why did they choose to make first-person swinging things? It's something that we see in gameplay, but they've integrated it now into the film in a way that we haven't seen in any of the other movies. So yes, that fight scene, because all of that action that you mentioned, all of these great motion control shots that are being done to kind of bring you into the Spider-Man experience, which is something that we first experienced with Into the Spider-Verse, where they're saying, oh, everybody can be Spider-Man. Now they put that in the live action here. You see, as Spider-Man is hurt, everybody is taking on the Spider-Man mantle and stuff, and they do it as part of the experience of watching this film. It's that kind of stuff that made me lead my belief to this being one of the more complete films, because we sometimes on this show and on any of our shows will talk about in the negative that a film is like a ride. This was a ride and a film in the way that I enjoyed every part of it. It was exciting to be a part of this film. It was exciting to go on this ride, and it at no point felt superficial or shallow in the way that it expressed it.
And just to add to that, to me, the best part of all that is that it's also contains what I think is the most Peter Parker moment I've seen from Toby, Andrew, or Tom, which is that there's 99% of the world, when a whole bunch of sword-wielding ninjas are leaping at you, are not going to say, man, that's cool. But Peter Parker will. And I've never seen him capture like that essence of in the midst of a fight. And like, yes, we had some of it all the way back in Civil War when he was introduced, but I haven't seen it again. And that moment, I literally cheered. I was so happy. And it just set up the fight so well, knowing that Peter is like, these guys are badass and I get to fight them, and that's okay. Let me survive. Yeah, the whole thing was perfect, and it was so practical, and everything you guys just said.
Do you know what else was I found myself really lingering on as I walked out of the movie is just how often Spider-Man, Peter in suit, is on the ground. Do you know how many doors he walks through in this movie? Like, he goes into buildings in the front door, in the suit. He has to walk through a metal detector. When does he do that? Usually he swings, he attaches himself to a building, he climbs through a window, or he comes in through the roof. Like, this Peter was on the ground, and I low-key loved it. I loved his relationship with the detective when he's always down in a crime scene, walking around, hands on hips. What do you think? It was weird in the best way for my money. I'm delighted in it. So back to the expression of Spider-Man, right? We also have these moments, I think, as Peter Parker, where again he gets to challenge the spell, right? Challenge the memory loss, and he does that with MJ. He does that with Ned, and the end of the movie is a hard cut on Ned, who frankly isn't in the movie all that much compared to his man in the chair role and some of the other ones. Where do you stand on the trio's relationship in this one? Steve, you want to take it?
It's an interesting thing going, if we're going to do resets on things, how do we do that, and do we make progress on that? I thought that was, I love the moment of Spider-Man just sitting down, putting together Legos with Ned, because it's giving us that it's giving the character Spider-Man that balance in life he needs, that like, I don't have to carry the burden. I can just be a guy doing something he enjoys with his friends. And I thought, going into this, I thought, how can we bridge this? They can't, remain completely, indifferent to each other the whole time. How do we get there? And it made enough progress. I felt like, okay, we bridged that, and it worked. And I think the dynamic, between them, I love to see the journey from just, observing to being able to interact in a new way of just, I'm Spider-Man, I'm going to connect with you on this way, versus I'm Peter first and then Spider-Man. He is now Spider-Man first, and then, oh, you are also this guy. And so I like that little twist about that. It brought something for me that's new and fresh to that, while still feeling true and honest to the characters as we've known them. The illusions, Ned refers to the other movies of it. Maybe you're somebody we know because you were at all these places. He's got his board. He's putting those things together. So it's not like a magical, the veil is lifted, but we're getting, little incremental progress towards understanding. And for me, that worked really well.
And it's important to take the time to do that, because this and the connection with Yelena for me was with this movie. Thunderbolts and this movie are about mental health also. That Thunderbolts was about depression, and this movie is largely about the loneliness epidemic, especially for a teenager growing into a man. And so that's just really important to have the patience and take the time to show really the difference between workaholic Spider-Man and friends Spider-Man, which is great.
I think the scene where MJ finds the letter and reads it and then doesn't fall back in love with him was my favorite whole movie. For so many reasons, but especially because, we talk about the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man as really starting a new era of superhero movies. And one of the things that it got us was this idea that you can't be the hero and get the girl. Like, he walks away from MJ. And at the time, I think we all loved it. And I think that has become really played out, in part because we've started to wrestle with, this is someone taking away the agency. He's not letting her be a part of the decision. And so for her to come back at him and say, I get why you did it, but you didn't give me agency. You didn't tell me. To me, it felt like not like a critique of that original one, but look, that made sense 20 years ago. But today we're in a new era of understanding relationships, and we're going to have something fundamentally different. And it's interesting. I'm curious if the way I see this is different from everyone else. To me, it didn't feel like it. I kind of wish we were going to get more of she's slowly starting to fall in love with him all over again. To me, the fact that she remembered his face enough to draw his face in that drawing, even though he's wearing the mask, brilliant. But I think what we're supposed to take away is that part of what Jean Grey's mental stuff did is jogged something loose.
So that's the conspiracy theory that I've seen on the web now, and that's why she has the tear during her Frozen part. Is that the whole thing about Jean Grey? When she can help people remember things, she can put things back in people's minds. Is that based on what she's done with Peter and what she's learned about being with Peter, she chooses to give MJ back the feeling or the memory of that. Now, again, it's just a conspiracy theory. It's a way to interpret what happened there, but I think it's beautiful. And it also is set in this thing that I've, sort of watched online to explain why Zendaya is, or why MJ at the end is on top of the roof with the Dahlia and having her emotional moment there, which I think is a great way to potentially take the story.
I didn't think it was, I thought that was just clearly what the movie was saying, especially since Ned at the end also has his memory is kind of awakened. But anyway, I've said enough.
Okay. Finally, just so we can get it out before we move to Letterboxd, let's talk about the post-credits scene. It's a post-credits graphic is what it is. It's Ned's app, and it's the spider tracker, and there are no spider sightings on the graphic, and then it zooms out, there's a spider sighting, and it's in the far reaches of space, maybe dare I say another in the multiverse. Did any of you, and I'm going to start with Tom,
What?
any of you have any wishes, hopes, dreams, prayers, insights as to what that meant when you saw it?
I think I already sort of said mine when I said it was nice while it lasted. Like I don't want Spidey in space. I'll take Spidey anywhere, mostly in that bathhouse. But I certainly don't. Putting him in space is a step in the wrong direction for me.
Okay.
So
anybody else have any hopes?
Post-credit scene ever.
Worst post-credits.
Worst, yes, because it gives you the information. It gives you stuff you already knew. Of course, he's coming back. And then the second thing is like, why go through all the trouble of rebooting him back to normal if you're just going to put him back into space? It's the worst. Yeah, no, I thought it was an awful idea. It does make it sound like he's going to be in Doomsday, which why? Because it does it like cramming him in there doesn't even make sense because no one knows who he is. So why would he be there? And then worst ever.
So there's a whole bunch of theories out there that that it's not Tom Holland that's actually going to be in space. It might be Tobey Maguire. That also could be something about the story aspect of Patrick Stewart and James Marsden. That really, with the idea of Doomsday is, and it's really the Doomsday trilogy now because we're talking about one Doomsday movie and potentially two Secret Wars movies. But what they're trying to do is tie up all the old timelines. And since we know nothing about the tracker, I mean, it could be also, telling us about Tobey Maguire and not Tom Holland. I agree that it was a terrible end scene. And it was like, it told me nothing that I didn't already kind of know. And it put me on board with all of you guys on this, where it was like, I love this movie and now I'm terrified about what's going to happen next.
Go ahead, Matthew.
I was going to say, I got to the last third of the movie and went, all right, this movie isn't going to set up Doomsday. I'll wait for the post-credit scenes to do that. Because remember, that's where Thanos was introduced.
Yeah.
Was in all that. And I was like, I ended it going, okay, cool. So what this tells me is I'm really excited for Spider-Man. I'm probably not going to go. I mean, of course, I'll go see Doomsday. Who am I kidding? But like, that was your last chance. That was the last piece of cinema that will happen before Doomsday comes out. And we still know nothing. We don't have a Tesseract. We don't have him reaching for the glove. I was baffled by it. I was like, I don't understand what you people are doing here.
Here's my wish cast. And it is, I think, substantiated by a couple of points, but I'm not going to go into those specifics. My wish cast is, and again, leaning heavily on the Doyleist interpretation of the MCU. Tom Holland is signed on for, I believe, 5 additional films now. Through he'll be 37, I think, when he does his last one. Doomsday. Apparently, if he's in it, it is a very minor role because they were filming Doomsday while he was filming this. So he was just not largely available for the movie. So if he's in it, it is going to be small. What this got me excited for is what happens after Peter Parker Spider-Man, because at some point there is going to be, as the result, I think, of the Doomsday Secret Wars wrap up of Phase 6, a uniting of Peter Parker and Miles Morales. And for me, giving us a Spider-Man trilogy post-Tom Holland with a Miles Morales lead is the only Spider-Man future for Sony. It has got to be that. It's just got to be. MJ and Peter are friends, sure. I would love it if the next 2 movies introduce Black Cat. I would love all that. But at the end of this, I want to see Miles Morales in the black suit swinging around New York. That would be, that's my wish cast. And I think there's a chance that maybe the Spidey tracker isn't tracking anything related to Doomsday, but it's actually just talking about the next Spider-Man movie writ large. That gives me more hope. How about that? Okay.
Sure.
We gotta I'll take it. We've got to letterboxed it. We've got to give our ratings out of 5 stars. Half stars count for all of you. And you can also, of course, give it a heart to show your glowing enthusiasm for those 5 stars. Steve, where do you start?
I start with, this is probably one of my favorite Spider-Man movies. I love the story. Had a great time. As I said, I love that it just rushes up against MCU, just sits with Spider-Man. 4 stars, solid 4 stars and a heart.
That's going up, right? We all know that's going up for you. That's just you being, 4-star Steve on a first watch. Right?
Yes, it'll probably creep up, but first watch was really enjoyable. I mean, if you can't get it into a screening of the Odyssey, definitely go see this. This is so much fun.
Okay, Ocean.
Yeah, I think that for me, you know what? Visually it was great. The story was great. It's entertaining. You don't have to know everything to know what it is. And I think that there's something to be said for that, even though I am a complete comic book geek, or I guess nerd. I have always been offended by the term geek, but that's just me. Anyway, so I'm a complete comic book nerd. I'm into having it be super complicated. I like all the Easter eggs and all that. But at the same time, I think that this movie is good in the way it is. I have my quibbles with it, but I do like the introduction of new villains into the MCU, and or old villains, because that's I'm going to stand on this. Spider-Man's a villain, and I like villains, and so I like the villain movie here. So I give it a 4 stars and a heart.
4 stars and a heart from Ocean. All right, JJ.
I'm sticking around the 4 spot as well. I do give it a heart. When I talk about sort of my favorite MCU movies, this is definitely in the top 10. And it's a very special movie. And I only say the top 10 because I haven't done the evaluation of what's there and what's better than it. It was so important to have this movie here now. And I want to say, we're recording this, 4 days after it opened? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
It's already made $350 million.
55, yeah.
Holy smokes, this is a good one. And I think it's worth it. Everybody should go see it. It's a lot of fun.
All right, Thomas.
I'm going to give it an extra 0.5 than I normally would, because it has all the trappings of the things that I don't like, and instead makes it work in a way that I found so enjoyable. So I'm actually, with a heart, giving it 4.5.
Wow.
Sorry.
Bold.
I'm a little bit higher.
All right, Matthew.
Yeah, I am. I think my problems with it are just that it's the last MCU movie before Doomsday. And so I think if you, on its own, as its own movie, it is far and away my favorite live-action Spider-Man. I still do think that the Spider-Verse movies are the best, and I wish they were more integrated. But I think it is where it sits in just cinema and like everything else that's happening, it is for me a 3.5 with a heart. If I can divorce it from it, I think after Doomsday, when I can go back and just watch this on its own, it is a 4.5 with a heart. I think it is easily top 10, probably top 5 MCU movies. If Doomsday wasn't going to be such a garbage fire.
Are we already rating
Doomsday? We're pre-hot taking.
Well, I don't know. Doomsday might blow me away. It's just that. Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna have to be I'm gonna have to be a spoiler, I guess. Is that what it is? Because none of you did it. I
5-star?
break glass on 5.
Wow.
I had an absolute blast. It just reignited my adoration of Tom Holland in the role. I like everybody in this, the way it was cast. We even talked about Scorpion. I like Scorpion getting the crap kicked out of him on the street. That was fantastic.
I just want him to speak Spanish.
Yeah, right. It's the only thing left,
Spider-Man.
right? Destin Daniel Cretton is on a roll. I loved Wonder Man, and I think this movie is fantastic. And I think having him as a part, Amy Pascal speaks such volumes about his contributions to this era of the MCU. I'm really excited to see what comes next. So that's it. Hey,
Well, we won't see him doing Wonder Man season 2.
no, I know.
No.
Pour one out for Wonder Man. What a fantastic show. Here's hoping he actually gets some play. I'll bet we cameo him somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out and listening to the show. We appreciate your time and your attention. If this conversation sent you down a rabbit hole or reminded you of some other films circling the same ideas, we do a lot of that work here on the Next Reel family of film shows. You can find everything we do as part of the family of podcasts at thenextreel.com. And if this is your first time here because of this movie, stick around, subscribe. We only do this once a month, and we're on a roll of good movies. And that's not always true. So now's a great time to start, where you can gaslight yourself and think that all we pick is great movies. It's not a good pitch? I don't know. I've got links in the show notes for everybody on this show. You've got to check out The Ethical Panda. You've got to check out Sitting in the Dark. You've got to check out all of the other shows that we're doing over here. Adrian Moment. We've got the long legacy of Steve and JJ here at The Next Reel. Involved on seemingly every foundational podcast we've done on behalf of Steve Sarmento and Ocean Murff and Justin J.J. Jaeger and Tommy Metz III and Matthew Fox. I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you next month right here on the Film Board. Meeting adjourned.